Hello again, it's Mr. Brown from the Saco Museum. In this video we're going to talk about how early Native Americans lived here in Maine. We're also going to take a look at some old stone tools that we have here at the museum. But first, let's talk about the first people that arrived here in America, tens of thousands of years ago. Ideas keep changing about how early people crossed over into America, but currently evidence points to a land bridge that once existed between the continents of Asia and America that joined at Siberia and Alaska about 20 to 30,000 years ago. Humans likely followed migration patterns of the large animals they hunted and crossed into North America. For a long time we imagined people crossing by land, but now experts believe that early people also used boats to travel even faster by sea along the coast and reach faraway places like South America. Large animals like the woolly mammoth also roamed the area of Maine. In 1959, the tusk and bones of a young female mammoth was also discovered in Scarborough, Maine. Carbon dating tests at a lab suggest it lived about 12,000 years ago. Another large animal that would have been living in Maine would be the mastodon. The mastodon is slightly smaller than the mammoth, and they prefer warmer climates, but still a very large animal. Here we have a mastodon tooth, or a mastodon molar, here at the museum. It's about, I would say, anywhere from 8 to 10,000 years old. I mean, look at the size of this thing. It's almost the size of my head. And this is just one tooth, right? And it has these kind of ridges on their teeth because they used to eat wood. They used to eat trees, entire trees, and these sharp teeth would smash the trees so they can digest it. A lot of these teeth, tusks, mastodon bones are often found off the coast of Maine, off of George's banks. A lot of fishermen would dredge up bones while they're fishing and find these things in their nets, right? Now they're out at sea because the shore used to extend out a lot further, way back 10,000 years ago. And as the sea level rose, right, our coast began to shrink back to where we are today. But mastodon would have been another animal that early Native Americans would have hunted during that time. All right, so here I have a collection of old stone tools that we have here at the Saco Museum. A lot of these were found in southern Maine. In fact, lots of these were found right here in the Saco-Biddeford area. And these were found while people were digging their property, for example, to build a house or a barn, and they were clearing the land and making a foundation and start pulling things like this out of the ground or finding things like this in the ground. So there's lots of evidence in this area that entire communities lived here for thousands and thousands of years. So let's take a look at some of these stone tools. Here we have a collection of spearheads and arrowheads, or we call them points. These all are missing the stick part, obviously. The stick part rotted away a long time ago, thousands of years ago, and the hard rock part remains. Now, of course, these points would have had a stick attached to them, and they would have been what we say hafted onto a stick. So hafting is when you take a stick and then you put a little notch in it, and then you can insert the point into the notch, and then you wrap it around with some kind of natural material. Back then it would have been vine or animal sinew, right? So these would have been used to hunt large animals. This was found in North Saco, not very far from Saco Middle School. And these are spearheads, and they're about, I would say, 8 to 10,000 years old. Right? And these would have been used to hunt large animals back then: mammoths, mastodon, saber-toothed tiger, right? So this is about 8 to 10,000 years ago, whereas these down here would have been about 4 to 5,000 years ago. And this is a new technology, bow and arrow, right? Now you have bow and arrow technology. You can have some distance between you and the animal. You can approach the animal quietly. And over time, the bow and arrow heads also get smaller, right? So these are about 3 to 2,000 years ago when people were hunting forest animals, because Maine about 2 to 3,000 years ago became very forested, right? Lots of trees grew around Maine, and Maine became very much like it is today, right? It has forest trees everywhere, and so people started hunting forest animals like deer, rabbits, birds. So you see the progression from large animals down to regular size animals. Let's take a look at this side. Let's start with these fishing plummets. So these strange rock objects are called fishing plummets, and they're very similar to fishing lures, right? They're used almost in the same way. And these would have been hafted, there's that word again, probably hafted with animal bones as fishing hooks, right? And then you would probably paste some bait on it to attract the fish, right? So these were dunked into the water to use to catch fish. Fishing tools. This here looks like a large version of the fishing plummet, but this actually is pretty large and pretty heavy, so we believe that this is a canoe anchor, right? You dip this into the water with a tie and it keeps your canoe anchored in the water. This over here is a net weight. We can see a groove over here, and so the net was probably tied around here. There was probably another one, so you have two, and it ties at both ends, and then you dunk the entire net into the water and it catches the fish, right? Net weight. Here we have axe heads, right? Pretty obvious that these are axe heads. Again, missing a critical stick, right? But this would have been hafted as so. Here's my sample stick, and you put it like that, and then you would tie it around here, around the groove, and then voila, you have an axe, an ancient axe. Similar with this, these are called gouges, right? Gouges, these were used to gouge wood, right? And these were also used to cut down trees. And these were also critical in building canoes. Now, people say that Maine is the gouge capital of the world, because if you're gonna look for ancient Native American objects, your chances of finding these are the highest, because Maine had a lot of trees and a lot of water, a lot of rivers and lakes. So people built many canoes out here, and people needed tools to cut down trees. Now, a lot of students ask me, how can these cut trees? They're not very sharp, right? Neither is this axe, not very sharp. So how did ancient Native Americans cut down trees with these tools? Well, let me explain.
Fire was used together with the gouge tool to cut down trees. As the wood burned, the gouge was used to chisel away at the tree. A similar method was used to build canoes. Fire was used to burn through the log, as gouges were used to dig out the canoe. Here's a photo of the Wampanoag people at the Plymouth plantation in Massachusetts, demonstrating how to build a traditional dugout canoe.
All right, I've saved the most mysterious object for last. These come in various shapes. They're called bannerstones for now. People have different theories on what these actually are. They all kind of have these wing shapes coming out like this. They all have a hole in the middle, and probably a stick went through it. But people aren't really sure what these were used for. There's many theories out there. People have debated for decades on what these could be. You folks might have some idea on what these are, but let's take a look at some theories out there on what people think these are.
For a long time, people thought these stones were used to start fires. Perhaps it added some downward pressure on a fire-making stick to add more friction. But people tried making fires this way and found it impossible, so this theory was wrong. The next theory was that this is an atlatl weight. Now, atlatl is a weird word, but it is a stick that helps to throw a spear further and with more force. By attaching the stone to the atlatl, perhaps it gave you even more distance and force when you threw the spear. However, Olympic javelin throwers tested this theory and found the stones made it even more difficult and gave you less force and distance when throwing a spear. But today we think it's a compromise. Yes, the weight gives you less force and distance, but it also allows you to hold the atlatl and spear in the ready position longer without tiring your arm. This was important when hunting deer, where you had to be super quiet and very patient. And because these stones come in many shapes and sizes, they perhaps symbolize a family or a tribal group, like a family crest or a flag, which is why today these are called banner stones. Still, nobody is 100% certain what these are. Do you have any ideas?
Hey, thanks for watching another Saco Museum video. In our next video, we're going to talk about ancient tales of a Wabanaki hero named Uska.